Ah, the minivan. Nowadays, a fairly common sight on American roads and roads all over the world, though you may not call them minivans. The classification over in Europe, for example, is generally an MPV, a multi-purpose vehicle. But regardless of what you call them, they are minivans. The classic dad and soccer mom vehicles, family automobiles. And hey, yes, perhaps they look a bit dorky to some. Not exactly the most stylish vehicles around. Not exactly what you'd consider cool, but they are incredibly useful. My father, for example, swears by minivans. He has loved minivans historically and hates SUVs. To be fair, I also hate SUVs, but mostly because of his influence, if I'm being honest, because as he pointed out, and he's right, not only have minivans historically gotten much better mileage when compared to a lot of gas-guzzling SUVs, but there's also more room generally inside of a decent minivan. You can use a minivan for all sorts of stuff, whether it be taking the family around or transporting things. An SUV, unless you're going off-road, is not superior to a minivan. And in the early 2000s, when people started buying a lot of SUVs because they looked cooler than minivans, yeah, maybe you looked cooler, but you weren't getting the job done better. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just saying, people! And whether you like them or you don't, they have a place in automotive history. But where does that history begin, I ask you? Where do they originate? Well, in terms of the term minivan, the first use of that was in 1959, though it didn't actually refer to what we would call a minivan now. It referred to the minivan. That's part of the mini brand, but a van form. And in terms of applying it to a whole class of vehicles, that wasn't common until the 1980s and into the 90s, when they started getting very, very popular and you started seeing them everywhere. But in terms of the first vehicle that can be called a minivan, because it is, even though it wasn't called that because the term didn't exist back then, we had to travel all the way back to the very short-lived motor company known as Stout Motor Car Company. Yeah, we're not talking about something super successful. We're not talking about Ford or GM. No. This is Stout. The heck is Stout? Well, the Stout Motor Car Company only ever produced a single vehicle. Behold, the Scarab. The heck is that? Well, it is generally viewed as the original minivan, built way ahead of its time, though. This perplexing beast was constructed during the streamlined era for both cars and locomotives, hence the, streamlined appearance. It looked sleek and fancy, even though it was just a van, but one for the whole family that could effectively transport large families around, without the need for multiple cars, or cramming all 17 of the children you had in the 1930s into a single sedan. That's not gonna work. But before we get into the details of the Scarab, let's talk about the founder of the Stout Motor Car Company, William B. Stout, generally referred to as Bill. He was an engineer who worked on both cars and airplanes. He also worked as a journalist. Very smart guy. And for a time, he was the president of the Society of Automotive Engineers, which is where he met Buckminster Fuller, who also did a lot in his life, but was also responsible for the creation of the Dymaxion car. A very interesting creation, very experimental, that was never put into production, but definitely drew attention due to its perplexing characteristics. At the time, contemporary production cars generally had a separate chassis and body with a long hood. The engine was placed behind the front axle and ahead of the passenger compartment. If that sounds normal to you, well, that's because it is. And the front-mounted engine usually drove the rear axle through a drive shaft. Again, very normal, but one of the weaknesses of doing it that way, especially back then, was that it limited passenger space. You could only make the passenger compartment so big because the drive shaft was there. The Scarab was different. It eliminated both the chassis and the drive shaft, resulting in a floor that was very low and flat. He also applied a unitized body structure, and the Ford-built V8 engine that the vehicle used was in the rear It was a rear-mounted engine. Now, nowadays, you're probably familiar with several cars that do have rear-mounted engines, but back in the 30s, that wasn't nearly as common, so it was much more unique. The man responsible for actually styling the car was not Stout himself, but a man named John Jarda. He was a Dutch automobile engineer, and his streamlining style took inspiration from an aluminum aircraft fuselage. The end result was relatively light compared to other vehicles on the roads at that point, keeping the weight under 3,000 pounds. And there were plenty of other innovations incorporated in this thing too. Stout saw the Scarab as a bit of a moving office, not necessarily a family vehicle, though you could use it for that. It was multi-purpose. To that end, it had a removable table inside of it, yes, really, and a second row of seats that could turn 180 degrees to face the rear. The interior space was maximized by the pontoon styling, which threw running boards out the window, which expanded the cabin the full width of the car as far as they could without getting into the engine area. It also had a pretty long wheelbase, all things considered. Passengers got in through a single large common door. Pretty much every single seat in the Scarab could be manipulated somehow and rearranged in order to fit whatever purpose the owners desired, except for the driver's seat. That one was fixed, but it was for the driver, and they kind of needed to stay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Ambitiously, the Scarab also featured independent suspension using coil springs. And that was back when most cars in the market still had rigid axles with leaf springs. The result was a very smooth ride. The engine position, coupled with the fact that the steering wheel was directly above the front tires, which were used to steer, meant that handling was incredibly good on the Scarab. And the Scarab also utilized a custom, Stout-built, 3-speed manual transaxle, which is a single mechanical device which combines the functions of a transmission axle and differential into one thing. Which sounds insane, I know, but it is a concept still seen now, though generally not on these sorts of family-oriented cars. They're usually seen on supercars, like Ferraris. But as a result of all this, the Scarab was a very unique beast, and perhaps that was the problem. It was too unique. A drivable prototype for the Scarab was finished by 1932, and some sources believe it was the first car to have an aluminum space frame unit construction body, though that's still somewhat debated. It was definitely close to the first if it wasn't. It still had some steel parts as part of the construction, though not nearly as many as other cars. A second prototype was done by 1935, and the second prototype was changed to a steel construction instead of aluminum to reduce cost. Now, while Stout might have had bigger aspirations, at first he was being conservative in his market approach. He said the car would be manufactured in only limited quantities and sold by invitation, meaning that he would pick the customers he wanted to sell to. He would say, hey, we want you to buy our vehicle. Like, it sounds weird, but he was trying to sort of slowly introduce the car. Perhaps he knew that just throwing it out in the market would result in a dismal failure. And he wasn't wrong. The Scarab did attract a lot of press attention, being sold for $5,000 at the time, equivalent to $113,297 today, which is super friggin' expensive for a minivan? No! No way! There's your first issue right there, Stout. That's not happening. Luxury vehicles at the time were less than 2,000 back then. Despite planning to produce just 100 a year at their small factory located at Scott Street and Telegraph Road in Dearborn, Michigan, they only ever made a total of 9. And that's a guess. We aren't really sure. All the Scarabs that were made were never produced in volume on an assembly line. They were each hand-built, resulting in vehicles that were not identical. Similar, yes, but because they were handmade, they had differences. And perhaps the largest problem for the Scarab, beyond the high price tag and the lack of an assembly line and the only selling them by invitation issue, is that, frankly, the general public just wasn't ready for minivans. A lot of people that saw the Scarab found them ugly. You may be watching this saying that, yeah, it looks pretty ugly. I don't think it's ugly personally. At the same time, I wouldn't drive one. Actually, scratch that. In the modern day, I totally would, just because of the uniqueness. Several decades later, this might have worked. If you drop the price a bit, it's not so dissimilar from the Volkswagen Transporter family. Besides being way, way too friggin' expensive. Stout still kept things going until even after World War II, building one more prototype referred to as the Stout Scarab Experimental. That was exhibited in 1946 and was a bit more conventional in its design. It sat a bit lower, looked a lot sleeker, and actually kind of spacey in its way. Still ahead of the time, but perhaps a bit more appealing. And a few firsts for automobiles itself. The first fiberglass body, and the first fully functioning air suspension. But this version of the Scarab never entered production. Stout was pretty much his own biggest fan. He had his own Scarab that he drove, accumulating 250,000 miles in traveling around the United States in his vehicle. So they were reliable, but he just couldn't show up any interest. The Stout Motor Car Company went defunct in 1946, ceasing all production on the Scarabs, but they are an interesting note in automobile history. Stout was clearly thinking forward. He was a smart guy and trying to innovate, and he did innovate. There was so much innovation in the Scarab, you can't deny that. But the way he handled the business side of things was awful. You can't charge an arm and a leg for something like this. It was too expensive. No one was going to pay that. Remember, he was charging that much in the 30s. During the Great Depression, Stout, my homie, my main man, my brother from another mother. No one's gonna buy that! Holy heck! But out of the very, very few Scarabs that were actually built, 5 of them did survive, and at least one was in running condition. Given their rarity, they're priceless nowadays, and I imagine you'll never see one outside of a museum, since that's pretty much where they all are. But hey, that was the first minivan, which was way too expensive for a minivan, but, you know, he was onto something here. They weren't bad vehicles, not at all. You just couldn't get anyone to pay for them. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.